I hope everyone is settled down and is very, very happy to be here. First of all, congratulations to all our graduates, whether you're from SSE, the Gurus or MSYLP. I think being a graduate myself and now being in the committee, I am super, super grateful of what Sai has given me. And every time we do work backstage or even seeing the graduates coming up today, it just reminds me of when it was my time 3 years back, and what a proud moment to be here. So I have taken a lot from being in SSE, SSEHV. So if I could ask Priya and Mithran, if you could tell me what is that one thing that you live by that you have taken from the SSE, SSEHV journey. So if you could tell us more about how your journey has been from being a guru, from being a student, from being playing different parts of roles in the organization. How has that been? So maybe you could start with Mithran.
Sure. Thanks, Suhana. I think one of the first things is, just give you background, I started off as an SSE student at the age of 6, and back then the program really ended at the age of 14, and then there was the informal teen youth program, or Group 4 as it is right now. So I thoroughly enjoyed Balvikas, as it used to be called, or SSE, and it used to be in various different places, from a school to a hall and then back to the center. And I've had the chance to do various different things. I must thank my gurus. I'm interested to know how come my guru just graduated again, because Auntie Maya, who taught me at the age of 9, is still learning, and that's an interesting part of this whole journey, because our gurus continue to learn. And there's so many people who have been gurus for me, and I'm very thankful for that. And from there, becoming a young adult, or youth as you used to call it, and I've had the opportunity to do various things. I remember the first time as a guru, and the hardest, it's easier to teach with the younger kids, because it's coloring and all that. But I started my journey as a Group 4 teacher, and I was super nervous on the first day that I taught. And I remember the oldest student, who was like 18 years old, who said, "Anna, nervous, Anna." So can you imagine your first class, you're already super nervous, and on top of that, the student catches the fact that you're nervous. And going through that, I think the students have taught me so much. I remember the earlier days, we used to have like 3 gurus to 2 students. But you know what, we still carried on. And I used to wonder why we're doing this. But my seniors, the likes of the late Sister Kuna, Sister Roshni, and they said that even if it means that one child gets impacted, that's all that it takes. And it was interesting for me, because there's so much of effort, sometimes a week, and for 2 students. And it's only much later that I realized it wasn't just the journey in the class, but it was much more the relationship beyond that. It's after that class and building the relationship and seeing so many faces. I realized how old you are when you suddenly see all the students, and you realize like, wow, you are graduating. And then I realized I think they may say, "Anna, you are getting old." In fact, they started calling me uncle, and that's when I know you're crossing that, you're going past the young adult line already. So I think for me, is playing the different roles is that learning journey. As much as you're a leader, every single bit teaches you something, and I think that's the most exciting about being in this organization.
I think also you said that Auntie Maya is graduating today. I have Auntie Kalyani in the crowd. That was my first ever teacher. And seeing her today just makes me feel like, oh my God, now I think it's time that even the gurus graduate for what they have done, and they've served us so much of values. How about you, Priya?
Sairam, so I think the question that you asked is what has been our biggest takeaway from SSE. I came from a family where we knew of Swami, and we were Hindus, but we weren't Sai devotees per se. So SSE really opened up Swami into my consciousness. And I think the biggest lesson for me that SSE has given me has been connecting to the inner Swami. I think a lot of us over here don't have the same privilege as those who stay in India, Swami students who had close proximity with Swami. And so for us, I think the predominant mode of connecting to Swami was connecting to the inner Sai. And SSE really taught me that. I think that lesson has helped me throughout my journey as an SSE child. after I graduated, after I finished my Group 4 classes, I remember even before my graduation, my Group 4 SSE guru, she suggested very casually, she said, you're very interested in teaching, I see, so why don't you go to Thailand? They have a science school in Thailand, and they have a diploma in SSE and SSEHV, so you can learn how to become an SSE, SSEHV teacher. This was right after I finished my Group 4, so even before my convocation ceremony, I just brought it up on my dinner table. My parents, who weren't Sai devotees at that point of time, they said, are you sure you want to go to Thailand? And it's a 3 months course, will you be okay? And I said, I think I really want to do this. So I went over there, did the diploma in EHV, came back as a trained SSE, SSEHV guru, and then graduated as an SSE student, started my journey as an SSE guru. So I started with Group 1 and then moved on to Group 4, then Group 2 and then Group 3. So for me, in fact, contrary to Mithran and Anna's experience, I thought teaching the older kids was a lot easier, because with the younger kids, half of the class you just spend disciplining them and telling them, okay, calm down, be quiet so we can get on with our lesson. But it has been a beautiful journey, I think, just knowing that when we really rely on that inner Swami, when we really rely on our inner Sai as our compass, to see how he guides us, to see how he takes over, to just be in that state where when we really give him the reins and let him be our charioteer, let him be our Sanatana Sarathi, I think being the witness and just seeing how life flows is incredible. It is unexpected, it is full of surprises, but it's been a beautiful journey.
So I think even being a guru myself in Balukas at a very, very young age, we always go through with teens and little kids that have so much to teach us. So if you could tell me one significant lesson that you have learned, whether you were a guru in Group 2 or Group 1 or Group 4, from a child that has stayed with you till present, a memory.
I'll think of the specific experience as I speak, but I think the one thing, I kind of alluded to that earlier, was sometimes, we prepare a lot for classes, and this is something that I shared once during a guru's training was, there's usually the lesson plan, and there's, what is the objectives, and all those are key and very important in preparation. But the one thing I think that's important and we must not lose in that whole experience is the heart factor. Because as we go through, sometimes there'll be children from different terrains, there'll be children from different backgrounds, and like you mentioned, sometimes that whole thing about discipline. But discipline also, the reactions that different children have, the different things that children say, sometimes we may take it to heart, or sometimes we may say that, why is this child so difficult? Why is it so hard to deal with? But I realize also that all of these different reactions, all these different things that they're saying is coming from a certain background. It's coming from a certain experience that they may be having. And sometimes it's a case of, there were some who were actually going through very severe mental health challenges. And particularly as, we used to see it in, young adults, then we used to see it in teenagers. But now even at the age of even 12 and 11, we see that this is kicking in. And it's key in that whole relationship with them that the heart factor comes in, because working with them, I think it's being able to know that each of them, as much as they are a class, each of them, there's a personal relationship that we're building with each of them. And I've had children who have, and this wasn't particularly for me. There's some of them who said, that one moment, Akka, that one moment, Anna, when you just listen. And I think the listening part, is key, which is we sometimes miss signals, when they're sharing, and you realize that, we used to get students who, everything the previous person said correct. Sometimes you sit in a group and everyone's sharing, and some will have like fantastic ideas, and then you'll get this one particular person, two people who just said, same thing only. And it's very key to pick out that these people, we may just, brush it off as, or maybe they just didn't have an idea, or maybe they were just lost, or they were bored in that class. But each one of that experience is an opportunity to send us an opportunity to work better with the child, to work more with the child. So I think in all of that, I think what the children also have taught me, I think over time, is none of them, you mentioned about discipline, right? I don't think any one of them have any ill intention. I don't think any of them are coming from the intention of just causing chaos. But the chaos sometimes comes from a space of getting attention, and it's a signal that's sent to us, if I may say.
Yeah, I think if I can just add on to their intentions of not causing chaos, I feel like many times when I've been in classrooms where I feel like there is so much chaos on the external, it is an indication for me to ensure that there is stillness internally. Because the moment a guru is still and silent within, I think you just have to carry that vibration of stillness, and then that automatically translates to the students just reflecting that same back to you. So I remember once I entered a classroom and it was just so noisy, and initially I was thinking, okay, I should say "Salam, everyone, settle down, settle down." They're still like roaring with noise, and then trying to go to each child and telling them, be quiet, we're going to get started with the class now, and still no effects. But then I realized the moment the teacher herself or himself truly becomes quiet and achieves that inner stillness, I just stood over there in the center of the classroom, just being still myself, and then everybody became silent. And so I think sometimes children may inadvertently also teach us that they will only reflect back at you the vibration that you are holding on to. So if you are seeing a lot of chaos on the external, it is an indication for us to achieve stillness internally.
Just to add on, I remember one particular student, I'm not going to name him, but I remember how he used to be a very silent person. But there's one thing that I felt that he continuously wanted to be a part of the classes. He may not have really participated much, he may not have really shared much, but he always wanted to be in the class. He had top-notch attendance. In fact, teen youth started at 15 and he started wanting to join us at 14. But we told him, no, you can't join the teen youth because, but what he said is, okay, never mind, I will go for my group 3 classes and I will come for group 4 classes. And how do you say no to that, right? So we said, okay, fine, if you want to. But he was very quiet even until he was 17. But it is only at the age of 18 and 19 that we started seeing his leadership. He started taking lead on programs, the ideas that came out of him. And I was like, where did this come from? We never saw this in this child. So to also know that, every child has their time. At the right time they bloom, at the right opportunity they bloom. And to give opportunity, we may see that the typical leadership is, maybe events and all that, but sometimes it may be a video. Sometimes it may be that, taking care of the audio or some environment activity. We never know, but at the right time, if we provide the opportunity and avenue, they will bloom. And it's for us to just continue to give them all the love and support.
Talking about leadership, I think even for Priya and Mithran, you all have carried out so many leadership roles in the organization. So if you could tell us, now that you've carried so many roles, being a guru or being a teen youth coordinator or being a modular coordinator, if you could tell us, how do you connect the dots every day? How do you live with insights from Balvikas, from being in SSE or from teaching? How has that helped you? And also being around so many good leaders who have constantly inspired us. So how has that journey of connecting the dots been?
I think for me, it's really the opportunity to pause. Sometimes, in all, sometimes there's so many things happening, whether it's work, there's family, there's a side organization. And one thing I've been taught, by some of my elders, by some of those who I realized are able to do well in, taking on a multitude of, responsibilities, is being able to take a step back and be an observer. Very often, when we take up leadership, we get, into the mix, we're getting into all the chaos that's happening, and what happens is we miss to take a step back and realize that, particularly in this organization, I realize it teaches you, and that's something that we can apply, which is, sometimes, we have a challenge in managing an individual who may not respond, that whole thing, we always joke about this, I send that person, he blue ticked me on WhatsApp again, and that's like the hardest thing, right? You're communicating and trying to get team members, and they're not responding, or the understanding is different. But what you realize is that each of those opportunities is teaching you something. And what it's taught me is that, a lot of people may know me very well and they say, Mithran is a very calm person. But behind this calm person is a very hot-tempered person. So, but the difference is probably that I all of it is internal and it's internal boiling, and that's why it doesn't work for me. Perhaps health-wise, if I keep panting it inside. But I think what these different leadership opportunities has taught me is that this doesn't work. I can't just keep getting frustrated or upset when someone doesn't do what they do. Sometimes it may mean I need to step in, but even that it's not the best approach, because then you end up micromanaging or you end up not giving a leadership opportunity. So one thing that I've realized in recent times is, for me, it's okay to say no so that somebody else can rise. That's also an opportunity. But sometimes saying no all the time is also not the greatest of things. So I just wanted to qualify that statement, and how that's helped me. It's allowed me to at this point, because playing a role as father of young children, it also means that I can't participate as actively in meetings, but it's allowed me to take a step back and play a more coaching role, and that works for me now. But that coaching role only is possible, and it's because I had my hands dirty from being able to be the person who sets up the camp, nailing things, and even then, sometimes there was supposed to be 7 of us here, and right now there's 1.5 people right now here. And you realize that each of it teaches you something. Maybe I needed to plan better, I needed to communicate better, and each of those teaches you one of those things.
I think even with I think maybe a follow-up question for you, Mithran, would be, how do you balance being a father, having a career, but also participating in SSE activities, even if it's just being a guru?
So firstly, I think it helps that I need to remind myself. It does help that I have a wife who reminds me at home. So that's very helpful, because my wife reminds me that, hey, you promised this. So for example, to give you an example of this event, for example, I was supposed to come in here for I found out about the rehearsals that were happening yesterday. But at the same time, I had promised my son 2 weeks ago that I was going to do Abhishekam with him for Ganesha. So rehearsal, Ganesha, Abhishekam, I had to make a call. And I realized at that point, I probably won't be able to, I probably would lose his trust if I do not, if I break his promise, of not being there. And it was very challenging to have an Abhishekam slot with him. And I chose Abhishekam slot. But there are cases where I need to speak to him, and that's explaining to him. So today is a Saturday, and I'm spending my entire Saturday here. But part of it, involved me explaining to him. Did it make him overly enjoy that I was not at home? No. But it also taught me that I needed to manage his expectations. But today morning, although I managed to steal some time and quickly had some rava dosa and ghee dosa with him, although I was worried that my white shirt is going to get stained. But those were moments that I steal, and it's not just about the amount of time, but the quality time that you spend. And like you mentioned that I may not be hands-on in all the activities that I may want today, but when I spend the time, I ensure that it's quality time, that I'm totally there. And I think that's what I think is key. So I may not be playing a similar role that I may have 10 years ago in being hands-on in everything, but in that quality role that I play, whether it's an advisor or coach, I'm totally present in there. And I think that's how it's helped to remain sane, if I may say, across the 3 things. Yeah.
Being present reminds me that when Priya was doing her master's in Singapore, she was still very much present, being the modular coordinator here. So how was it for you to go on with your masters, but also manage your time with everyone in the organization?
I think I'll go back to the central learning that SSE has given me, is of connecting back to that inner side. And I think when we really sort of relinquish the idea that we are the doer, and we keep asking Swami, Swami, what is your will? Swami, guide me. Swami, please do this through me. We will find ourselves just infused with so much energy, so much enthusiasm, so much joy, a higher capacity to love, a higher capacity to serve, more clarity in terms of what are the areas of service that we can contribute to. The moment we just give those reins to Swami, I think we will see that life just flows. Success will just follow us, both material success and spiritual success. And I think, in today's world, it's so easy for us to get distracted, to get diverted, to believe that, I can do this or I can't do this. Some of us may be on one end of the spectrum where we believe, there's too much ego. On the other end of the spectrum, there is too much self-doubt, there is too much self-deprecation, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. I think that is us being too attached to this body, this self, assuming that we are the ones who are doing. But the moment we connect to our inner Swami and we remind ourselves again and again that it is you, which, I mean, Swami is not really separate or distinct or distant from us, but that higher self, that Sai, when we ask him to be the doer, I think we are just, we then become the witness of how miraculous life is. So there is this story that is coming to my mind. I remember many years ago, one of Swami's students shared with us, he said his practice was just to visualize speaking to Swami. So he said, I had this personal Swami in my head who I would talk to all the time, and I would crack jokes with this Sai Baba of mine, and it was so nice just, imagining and fantasizing your personal Swami with you and getting darshan, sparshan, sambhashan from your imaginary Swami. And so he said, I would talk to this inner Swami all the time, and he said I was, during that time when he was in Parthi, he said he noticed Swami was not talking to any of the science students, Swami was not taking any letters from the students. So, in his imagination, he told his imaginary Swami, he said, Swami, you're not talking to any of the boys. Here I am, I'm enjoying this darshan, sparshan, sambhashan with you. But you, Swami, you are an imaginary Swami, you're not real, you're not the physical Sai Baba. If you are really listening to me, if you, Swami, are the real Sai, the inner Sai who, everybody keeps talking about, then Swami, don't talk to anybody tomorrow when I come for darshan. Only come and talk to me and only take my letter. And so he said this to his inner Sai, his imaginary Swami friend, and the next day he goes for darshan and he's sitting in darshan, and Swami is walking and Swami doesn't talk to any of the students, and Swami crosses him, and as Swami is nearing him, he's thinking, I think Swami is going to come to me, Swami is going to take my letter, he's holding his letter, he's ready to give it to Swami, and Swami crosses by him, ignoring him, and then his first thought is, Swami didn't listen to me, I was just imagining it all the time, this fantasy Swami is not real. So Swami, moves in front of him, and then he notices everybody is looking up at Swami's face. He notices Swami's hands are behind his back, and from the back, Swami is doing this with his fingers. Okay, so he's seeing, is anybody looking at Swami's fingers? And everybody's just looking up at Swami's face. Nobody is seeing Swami's fingers. So he said, I think this is my chance. I'm just going to put my letter in between Swami's fingers and let's see what Swami does. So he puts his letter in between Swami's fingers, and Swami very quickly takes the letter and hides it under his armpit, and Swami walks on ahead. And so, he then, when he was narrating this experience to us, he said, when you really believe that inner Sai is in fact the outer Sai, that there is no difference, you will see that the outer Sai keeps reconfirming that he is listening to each of your experiences. He said, a few days later, Swami then, when Swami resumed speaking to all of the students, Swami called him personally and Swami said, inner Sai, outer Sai are one. No difference, no difference. So for me, I think I really took that experience to heart. I started speaking to my inner Sai all the time. Before I wrote any assignment, when I was doing my masters, I would say, Swami, I'm offering this assignment to you as prasadam, as naivedyam. Whatever the grade comes, I'm going to accept it as prasadam. This was another PN formula that I learned. Everything that happens to you, everything that you receive, take it as Swami's prasadam. Everything that you do, offer it to Swami as naivedyam. So when we are students, we are doing assignments. When we are working, we have our work projects. When we are parents, we are raising our children. When we are gurus, we are teaching our classes. Whatever capacity of work that we're doing, everything we keep offering that to Swami as naivedyam. And whatever the outcome comes, whether it's good or bad, whether it's in our favor or not, we accept that as prasadam. If we start living our life in this prasadam naivedyam cycle, this PN cycle, then Swami says he will install his PN, his Prashanti Nilayam in our hearts. So for me, I think just doing everything as naivedyam to Swami, receiving everything as prasadam from Swami, holding on to that inner Sai, asking him, Swami, what is your will? What is it that you want me to do? I think as a product of that, I feel so much material success has followed, so much joy has come into our lives. I feel at the moment we start experiencing a lot of trouble, we feel a lot of disappointment, a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment, stress, tiredness. whatever gamut of negative human emotions, we need to check ourselves. Are we connected to our inner side? Because if we are connected to our inner side, we won't be out of flow. We may be facing challenges. Of course, we will face hurdles. But Swami will give us the courage. Swami will give us the strength to overcome it. Swami will give us the clarity to understand why are we going through this. I remember I had 1 year where every day I was just crying. I used to drive all the way to Samani. This is while I was an undergraduate student. I had 3 hours of driving, so 1.5 hours to Samani, 1.5 hours back. Every day, my entire drive, I would just be crying. Come back home, cry, sit in front of Swami's photo, cry, before I sleep, cry, go in the shower, cry. And there was just so much crying, oh my God. But now in hindsight, when I look back at that 1 year, I think about how, had I reconnected back to Swami, had I remembered that, my inner side, my best friend is within me, and it's so easy for us to go within, it's so easy for us to connect. I think when Murli Anna was giving us his opening speech, he walked all of us through that small short meditation of connecting to that inner side. We all know how to get over there. Swami's taught us countless techniques of connecting to him. Whichever technique resonates best with you, whether that is meditation, it is namasmarna, it is doing seva, whatever it is, to connect to your higher self, to connect to your inherent divinity, do that and you will find yourself just with this renewed sense of motivation, clarity, joy, this strength to surmount the inevitable tragedies of life. I think everybody is going through some suffering or some sorrow or some pain, but we don't have to suffer through it all. We can hold on to Swami, just like how a child holds on to Swami's robe and says, Swami, I'm dealing with a lot of BS, but with you by my side, everything becomes fun and joy, everything becomes a game. Swami gives you a hurdle, you feel like I'm going to take it as a challenge. With Swami by my side, I'm going to overcome this.
Very well said, Priya. The one thing that stuck through me the whole time was, how the Lord was able to be so cheeky and playful. And I think that's the whole thing about how, when we deal with life, right, there's going to be those challenges, there's going to be those, burdens, as people may term it, but it's, if we deal with it in the spirit of joy and that excitement, I think this, all these things just, they become just, mere bumps rather than, huge boulders in front of us. And I think, I totally saw that in that entire message, the whole living in joy and, living in bliss, and that I think will really take us through the journey.
Yeah. If I can just say, when you said, how cheeky Swami can be, in that 1 year, I remember when I was crying every day, Swami came in my dream once and he was scolding me for what I was really sad about, okay? And Swami was just bombarding me. And for those of you all who have seen or heard from students, when Swami gives you his rage, he's really like Kali. I mean, you just want to run away. You just want to hope the ground splits apart and consumes you, because it's just the absolute worst. And so Swami is just shouting at me. And then after Swami is done, in my dream I had the audacity to ask Swami Pad Namaskar. And so, obviously Swami in his anger just walked away and, I didn't get my Pad Namaskar. But the cheeky part is that I remember when I woke up, I was just beaming like a Cheshire cat. I was smiling away because Swami in my dream wore a blue color robe. And the very first painting that I had made of Swami was Swami in a blue color robe, because I always wanted my first darshan of Swami to be Swami wearing blue. I always connected with Shiva, so I said my Sai Shiva will come to me in blue. That was one of my very first dreams. So I guess it's a trade-off. Swami makes me suffer, but then comes in my dream, gives me blue darshan, gives me a nice scolding, maybe which I deserve. But you wake up and you're thinking, on one hand he's giving you a tight slap, on the other hand he's caressing your face, and that's the cheekiness of Swami. I think when we have the awareness, we can appreciate how, like a parent, he really takes care of us. He ensures he disciplines us, but he will also give us love in equal measure.
I think thank y'all for giving us your darshan today and helping us connect the dots. So thank you for the first part of our session, for being here today. We have a surprise element for our second part of the session. So a little, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our second part of the panel session is a bit different. It's a bit more of a surprise element, and I have my two most favorite people after Mithran and Priya. So just a bit of an introduction. Our first panelist is Darshana Balakumaran.